Welcome to Moby D, the podcast about everything related to Moby Dick.
And we are your host, Lexi.
And HP.
And today we're going to talk about chapter 119, Be Candle.
Just step on your feet, let's get it on. Just step on your feet, let's get it on. Just
So let's jump right in. Let's review the chapter. What happened?
The chapter starts off with the Pequod being rocked by a typhoon near the coast of Japan, and there are also a lot of lightning strikes on top of the ship as well. Overall, a very terrifying scene.
That's right, HP. The lightning makes white flames appear at the top of the three masts of the ship, which makes the crew go into a complete frenzy. Everybody freaks out.
In reaction to the typhoon, Stubb and Starbuck took different approaches towards the storm. Stubb thinks that it's easiest to face it heads on and uses the storm as a way to help the ship move faster. So he sings a song, a very positive, uplifting song. However,
Starbuck thinks one should be just brave and tough it out without song.
so there are a juxtaposition between these two characters, further bringing out the characteristics of these different characters who represent different things within Moby Dick.
Also, just the juxtaposition, it's just the different ways they approach the situation and different, I guess, even types of sailors, really.
Exactly, religious one that sings a lot.
Yep, there you go.
And then the big boss, Ahab, joins the crew as he doesn't let Starbuck catch out the lightning rods to steer away the lightning from the ship. Ahab believes that the white fire, so-called corpuscence in this chapter, as eating away the three masts, are good omens, resembling spermaceti candles.
Yeah. The crew is terrified, even more so when Ahab's newly made harpoon catches fire. Starbuck exclaims that God is against Ahab, and that the voyage is cursed. He begs Ahab to turn the boat around to go home.
The crew almost has a mutiny, but Ahab stops them by blowing out the harpoon's flame, blowing out the last fear.
Much of the crew remained terrified of him after the fact.
And that's pretty much the summary of this chapter.
step on your feet, let's get it on. Just step on your feet, let's get it on. Just
So now that we've gone over what this chapter was about, let's get into the symbolism and the omens and all the...
Good stuff.
Oh yeah, all the good stuff right packed in here. Let's do it.
One of the main events in this chapter is the interaction between Ahab and the crew. So, Lexi, how has Ahab's actions in this chapter actually affected the crew?
So by the end of the chapter, the crew's tired. There's a storm going on. There's literally the masts are on fire. They pretty much all want to go home. So they're about to start a mutiny. And Ahab is on really, really thin ice. And even when he puts an end to it, the crew is still, left with a really bad taste in their mouth. They're not really... Ahab is a lot different than who they thought he was. And they're really not going to be as, I don't think, compliant to his every wish and desire anymore. I think they're really done with Moby Dick, and they just want to get their whales and their whale oil and go home.
Yeah.
So HP, as we've talked about before, there are many examples of omens in this chapter, objectively good or bad depending on who on the Pequod you ask. What do these omens do to the plot and characters?
I mean, in order to actually understand what these omens are performing in this chapter, let's just explore what is an omen in general.
Okay. So, an omen is a phenomenon believed to foretell the future. In ancient times, people believed omens were messages from God, actually.
Right. And in this chapter, we can see that there are various omens, but we're going to concentrate on the four, like, reoccurring omens. First one is the gale. The next one is the corpusant. The other one is the harpoon of Ahab, and the last one is the reoccurring number 3 throughout the whole book in general. Do you want to talk about the gale?
Sure. So in the chapter, the gale is really, the crew in the beginning has really good outlook on it. They're like, oh, you can just sing, it's fine, we'll get through it. It's all part of, whaling and everything. And then...
And Starbuck actually mentions the gale as in a very positive connotation, as he says, the gale that now hammers at us to stave us, we can turn it into a fair wind that will drive us towards home. Yonder, to windward, all is blackness of doom, but to leeward, homeward, I see it lightens up there, but not with the lightning. So in general, he interprets the gale as a compass or a map of some sort that directs them towards home and safety and comfort, whereas the other direction, the direction that perhaps Ahab prefers, poses a lot of threats and a lot of dangers.
Right, they're literally going against the wind, which is really like the opposite of where they want to be going. It's way more difficult to go against the wind than with the wind when you're sailing or doing anything in the ocean.
Exactly, physics.
Right, it's almost like the fates are like, we don't want you to go this way, like turn around.
Exactly.
Right.
Okay, let's move on to the next omen, which is the 3 corpusants. What do you think they are doing?
So Ahab and the crew have a very different outlook on what they mean. Ahab really believes that it's very good luck, and he actually says on page 382, I take that masthead flame we saw for a sign of good luck, for those masts are rooted in a hole that is going to be chock-a-block with sperm oil. Do you see? And so all that sperm will work up into the masts like sap in a tree. Yes, our 3 masts will yet be as 3 spermaceti candles. That's the good promise we saw. So he really believes that it's going to bring... He knows that the crew really wants the sperm oil. That's what they're there for. They're there to kill, the sperm whales and get what they need to sell the sperm oil. And so that's why he's trying to appeal to them. He's saying that, the storm is really intense, but it's a good omen that,
The harpoon is definitely one of the more negative omen in this chapter, as it sort of predicts and foreshadows the mutiny coming up in this book. And along with the topic of the harpoon, a harpoon usually has 3 prongs.
Right.
Therefore, we can sort of like deduce that the number 3 has been occurring throughout the book quite regularly.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Exactly. In this chapter, the number 3 occurs in the 3 prongs harpoon, or the quoted tri-pointed trinity of flames, referring to the 3 quote unquote candles, and also the 3 mountains mentioning in the past chapter. Well, about the number 3, it sort of like connotes a very religious, a more divine presence in this book, as it refers to the faith and the sort of like greater force that drives the Pequod, not just from free will and self-determination. So now let's have a little commercial break.
Have your boat masts ever set on fire? Has your roommate ever randomly combusted in the middle of the night? Has your friend ever been too lit? Then you've come to the right place. Get your own Corpusant fire extinguisher, now for just $9.99. For this $9.99, you can have your own extinguisher with the all-new Moby Dick design and a poster of Queequeg posing on the beach. Call 684 Corpusson now for even better discounts.
So let's get back to our discussion about chapter 119 of Moby Dick. Lexi, do you want to read this passage on page 382?
Sure, HP. So it's on the bottom of the page if anyone wants to follow along. Oh, thou clear spirit of clear fire, whom on these seas I as Persian once did worship, till in the sacramental act so burned by thee, that to this hour I bear the scar. I know now thee, thou clear spirit, and I know now that thy right worship is defiance. To neither love nor reverence wilt thou be kind, and even for hate thou canst but kill, and all are killed. No fearless fool now fronts thee. I owe thy speechless, placeless power, but to the last gasp of my earthquake life will dispute its unconditional, unintegral mastery in me. In the midst of the personified impersonal, a personality stands here, though but a point at best, whensoever I came, wheresoever I go, yet while I earthly live, the queenly personality lives in me, and feels her royal rights. But war is pain, and hate is woe. Come thy lowest form of love, and I will kneel and kiss thee, but at thy highest, come as mere supernal power, and though thou launchest navies of full-frighted worlds, there's that in here that still remains indifferent. O thou clear spirit, of thy fire thou maddest me, and like a true child of fire, I breathe it back to thee.
It is a very powerful paragraph, don't you think?
It really is. There's so much in there.
I know. It's a sort of like a very philosophical paragraph, to be honest. I think it sort of reminds me of Ahab's grudge against Moby Dick, don't you think?
Oh, definitely.
In this paragraph, he sort of compares the omens to Moby Dick in a way, as they both contains divine and holistic properties, and Ahab admits his compliance towards these figures, as he says, I now know that thy right worship is defiance. To neither love nor reverence will thou be kind. And through that, he also sort of admits that these holistic, godlike figures do have a lot of flaws. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And there's so many parallels to... I think he's almost talking to Moby Dick at some points. In the last sentence, he says, O thou clear spirit of thy fire, thou maddest me. And like a true child of fire, I breathe it back to thee. And I think that's a reference of how Moby Dick literally turned Ahab mad. And he's gonna get his revenge. He wants his revenge.
Just step on your feet. Let's get it on. Just step on your feet. Let's get it on. Just.
So we've talked extensively about omens in this chapter and how they related to the Pequod and Moby Dick. How do you think in the real world omens occur?
Omens, I feel like, are still relevant in this world, not in the sense that they actually happens in the world. It's just that people still discuss about it. Some people still believe in it, and it's just a cultural thing, right?
Right, definitely.
Like, yeah, exactly. In this chapter, we mentioned a lot about number 3 and the Holy Trinity, and how that the whole theme of number 3 is surrounding the biblical context of, divinity and God. I feel like there are a lot of animals; those are referred to as omens as well. Don't you think?
Oh, definitely. They're like crows are seen as symbols of death in many cultures, and likewise, they're in the 2016 election. A finch landed on Bernie Sanders' podium when he was giving a speech or a rally in Portland, and he said it was symbolism for it was a dove and it was symbolism for world peace, when in actuality it was a finch. But people were saying that finches are omens of good luck and happiness, which was really interesting, especially because many people were saying that, oh, like he's gonna win now, like it's a omen that he's gonna win, and Trump ended up winning the election. That concludes our podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more Moby Dick content.